The Rams and Seahawks delivered another classic. Ever since that Thursday night game between these two teams about a month ago, we were all hoping for a Rams Seahawks Part 3. After splitting two very close contested matchups in the regular season between these two NFC West rivals, met again for a rubber match with the winner advancing to Super Bowl 60. The Seahawks set the tone early, forcing a Rams 3 and out. Now, Rashid Shaheed coming into this game had an explosive start to the postseason, taking back the opening kickoff in their divisional round matchup against the 49ers, 95 yards for a touchdown, and that was actually all the points that they would need to win that game. They won that game 41-6. And Rashid Shaheed has been one of the best midseason acquisitions in recent memory, but he got the party started on a 51-yard bomb from Sam Darnold, and that set up K9's fourth touchdown of the postseason as they took a 7-0 lead. Now, despite the Rams fighting back and the Rams taking a brief lead, Darnold found JSN to regain the lead and momentum heading into halftime. The play design on this touchdown to JSN was nasty work by Clint Kubiak as he lined up Jackson Smith-Njigba in the backfield as a running back, and he took advantage of the coverage as there seemed to be some type of miscommunication and over-rotation, and they found Jackson Smith-Njigba wide open for the go-ahead score before halftime. After halftime, the Rams managed to force a Seahawks punt, but once again, special teams would come back to haunt them at the worst time possible, with Xavier Smith muffing the punt as the Seahawks were able to cash that in immediately on the next play for a touchdown to extend their lead 24-13. Suddenly, the Rams, who haven't had a meaningful snap in about 45 minutes of real time, suddenly were down 11 when the last time they took the field they were up 3. Credit to Matthew Stafford for leading a quick response, finding Devontae Adams, but the Seahawks came right back as Sam Darnold found former Ram Cooper Kupp to put the Seattle Seahawks back up by 11. On the following possession, we thought the Seahawks defense did the job. They would force a punt and give it back to Sam Darnold, but Leek Woolen got flagged for taunting by running his mouth too much after nearly intercepting the ball and bringing the Rams into a 4th and 15 situation. Instead, this gives the Rams a fresh set of downs, and then he gets burned on the next play as Stafford found Puka Nacua, and once again, it's a 4-point game. Now, in the fourth quarter, the Rams would threaten to take the lead, with Stafford surprisingly converting a 4th down using his legs, but the drive stalled out within the 10-yard line as Seattle's defense kept LA out of the end zone. Devin Witherspoon did a great job on 3rd and 4th down, breaking up what could have been touchdowns with stellar coverage and pass breakups to preserve their 4-point lead. Sam Darnold would go on to team up with Kenneth Walker, Cooper Kupp, and JSN to bleed almost all of the remaining 5 minutes off the clock, and once the Rams did have a chance with about 20 seconds or so left, it wasn't really a quality possession. Seattle did the job. They tackled Puka Nacua inbounds, and the Rams didn't even get a chance to set up a Hail Mary attempt to win the game. When they needed to, Seattle's defense got the job done, and now the Seahawks are going back to the Super Bowl for the first time in 11 years. Let's start off with the LA Rams here because, it really sucks to see Matthew Stafford have such a stellar season and it was wasted. Just 11 months ago, we didn't even know that he would even be back with the LA Rams. He was negotiating what his new deal could be with other teams. There were talks he could join the New York Giants, the LA Raiders, but eventually, after figuring out what his number was, he ended up back with the Los Angeles Rams. But despite the new deal, he did face a back injury to start training camp, and he didn't even practice that much before the season opener. Still, he took some time to rest and had a very stellar season, first team All-Pro, and likely slated to earn his first ever MVP award. Once again, he and the offense, I think they balled out in this game against a very good Seattle Seahawks defense. But the one thing is, while they did produce a ton of yardage and points, they weren't that great on 3rd down. In fact, the only 3rd down conversion was by penalty, which was the Leek Woolen taunting penalty. Not sustaining drives was a big issue for the Rams early, as that's how they got into that hole in the first half. Now, I do feel that there were some key missed moments by Sean McVay that I think he wanted back. Let's start off with how the first half ended. With 1 minute and 33 seconds left, the Rams did not get a first down, and this gave Seattle enough time to regain momentum and score before the break. Their strategy on that possession was run a couple plays, kill some clock, maybe even some timeouts by the opposition, and then once you get a first down, then you kick it into high gear and you run your 2-minute offense. But on that possession, you saw a run followed by incompletion, and that stopped the clock, thus giving the Seahawks just over a minute to get down the field and score a touchdown and also get back momentum. The other part of this was special teams. Special teams has haunted this team all season long, and Xavier Smith, who already muffed a kick earlier in this game, but thankfully got back on top of the ball thanks to a fortuitous bounce. The second one was honestly a comical attempt to field the ball. I mean, this guy was drifting back, and I don't know what he was doing. He was already falling when he was trying to catch the ball, and I don't know if the collision affected him securing the catch, or he was already losing possession by the time he was falling back. It was just a very clumsy play. It came at one of the worst times possible because that set up Seattle in the red zone, which they scored on the very next play. And like I said before, the Rams fought back after an early first half deficit. They took the lead, and then after kicking the ball back on a short possession before halftime, next thing you know, you're not just down 4, you're down 11 before your next meaningful possession. And that, I think, gave the Seahawks just enough insurance to see this through to the finish line. The next decision, I think, which is hard to dissect at the time, but why not go for 2 after the Rams scored their second touchdown? That third quarter became sort of a back and forth affair, and there was a second touchdown where momentarily the Rams were down 5, and it was 31-26. Why not go for 2 in that situation? If you go for 2 and you convert, then all you need is a field goal, which did come back later in the fourth quarter when they were driving down the field. If instead of having to go for the touchdown to win it or take the lead, at a minimum you could at least settle for 3 and it's a tie ball game, and who knows, maybe it goes into overtime and LA comes out victorious. But instead, not going for 2 did come back to hurt them for sure. The other aspect was, after getting stomped on fourth down, they still had to kill some clock, and Cooper Kupp converted a third down conversion into a first down by kind of corkscrewing his way for the first down marker. Now, it did look short at first glance. The referees called it first down, but for whatever reason, I'm not really sure, but Sean McVay calls timeout. I guess his team a little bit more time to say, hey, do you want to challenge this or not? By doing that, and with the call on the field being a first down, it's going to be pretty hard to have that clear, indisputable evidence to flip that to a fourth down. And even so, Seattle's probably going to run a tush-push and convert it anyways and kill more clock. So by doing that, calling the timeout kind of hurt them there. Either you commit to the challenge and you lose that. Instead, it's kind of like a double jeopardy and does hurt their clock situation and kind of renders their final possession meaningless. Next year, Sean is going to have to get the special teams right, because 2025, I mean, I don't know what was in the water, but their special teams was abysmal all year long. It was missed kicks, block kicks, missed coverages, 2 kickers during the season, and you had the blown coverage in the second matchup against the Seattle Seahawks, which kind of flipped this whole season on its head. If you win that game, you probably host the NFC Championship game, and Seattle's probably coming to your place. That kind of ignited Seattle's run to the Super Bowl, honestly, because they got home field advantage just by winning that very game. And Xavier Smith's muff was just inexcusable, and I really think that unfortunate timing put a cherry on top of a nightmare season by this unit. The Rams struggled in the secondary too all year long, and I think their corners got exposed throughout. They do have pretty good safeties in Cam Curl and Cam Kitchens, but I think their cornerbacks are really something they're going to have to focus on next year. They do have the 13th overall pick thanks to that Falcons trade last year. I think that's something where you invest in finding a top tier cornerback in April's draft. I mean, this offense, they balled out all year long. You had a great year from Matthew Stafford, probably going to win MVP, but next year they're going to be, him and Devontae Adams are going to be another year older. You don't know how they're going to look after another year of just going through it. Now, I do think Matthew Stafford is going to suit up, but Devontae has kind of gone through some injuries as of late. He missed some time during the tail end of this year with a hamstring injury. I'm confident that Stafford returns for one last dance, but this offseason is going to have to be really rounding out the margins of this roster, maximizing likely his final year in the NFL. And, the other aspect is trying to really nail down Puka Nakua's contract extension, because he has earned of being the highest paid wide receiver. He's been stellar since entering the league in 2023. With this year on top of it being a first team All Pro, he's definitely going to earn some big money with this contract extension. Now, let's jump to Seattle, and it's got to start off with Sam Darnold. I mean, I think this whole couple of weeks heading into the Super Bowl, we're going to talk about his turnaround, his redemption arc. But in this game, I think he was particularly really dialed in. He was doing it all for the Seahawks offense. I thought this might have been his best game of his career. And when you think about the stage, you think about the stakes. Heading into the postseason, the questions about the Seahawks team, yes, they have this stellar defense and they have JSN, but was Sam Darnold the weakest link? I mean, we've seen him before in the playoffs. He hasn't looked that great. In the NFC Championship game, however, that great Seattle defense, they were getting shredded by Matthew Stafford, and it was Darnold who came to the rescue by setting the pace for this Seahawks offense to keep them in front despite a very hot Matthew Stafford and that Rams offense. And with this win, Darnold beats the team that ended his season last year with the Vikings and, kind of painted a black mark on his career. He had this great season with the Vikings and he won 14 games, but he endured 9 sacks, lost 2 turnovers along the way, and it was a one-sided affair, that wild card loss. And, that kind of led to his exit out of Minnesota. And coming into this year, that first matchup against LA, really bad. Chris Shula got him seeing ghosts again, 4 interceptions and not so great. And even the start of the second matchup against the Rams, also not that great. He threw 2 picks and it looked like Seattle was dead in the water. But after that second interception he threw to Kobe Turner, some switch got flipped in Sam Darnold's head. He read that defense like a book and he torched the Rams defense for 433 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, while completing over 70% of his passes in just about 5 quarters of play. Just think about that. That defense that gave him nightmares, put him on his back, made him second guess himself. He shredded them for a game and a half, and that's really attested to his resilience, not even just in his career, but over the last couple of years. And if you can believe it or not, Sam Darnold will be the first quarterback from this talented 2018 draft class to advance to the Super Bowl. You think about Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, that's the number 1 overall pick. Those are 2 MVP quarterbacks that have won 3 MVP awards, but it's Darnold that's going to be the first one in that class that will be starting in the Super Bowl. Now let's jump to John Schneider and Mike McDonald, because these two have done a great job in turning around this Seahawks team in just a 2-year span. It was a masterful offseason by bringing in Sam Darnold on a cheap, team-friendly deal while also flipping Geno Smith for a 3rd-round pick, and this was before his eventual regression with the Vegas Raiders that led to Vegas being the worst team in the NFL. Meanwhile, Seattle is in the Super Bowl. Also, great job by Schneider by signing veterans like DeMarcus Lawrence and Ernest Jones IV. Great moves to bolster up that defense and eventually making that midseason trade for Rashid Shaheed. With these moves, John Schneider has to be the runaway favorite to win Executive of the Year. And then Mike McDonald, well, he does a great job in leading the league's best defense, and they call themselves the Dark Side, which I think is a great way to build their own legacy as they try to get out of the shadow of the Legion of Boom, which was Seattle's great defense a decade ago. And while this defense admittedly got shredded by Stafford, they did come up with crucial stops when it mattered most to start the game and also on the final drive in the shadow of their own goal line. Let's talk about Jackson Smith-Njigba, who had a stellar performance in the NFC Championship game. JSN torched the Los Angeles Rams, eclipsing the 100-yard mark before halftime, and he finished with 10 catches for 153 yards. He routinely found holes in the zone and racked up a ton of yak yardage, as well as coming up with some wow plays, which included a couple of contested catches. He's a guy who's been a route running technician since entering the NFL, but really has improved his craft in year 3, and this has made Sam Darnold's life all that much easier, especially being the true go-to option in the Seahawks offense. And he came up with 2 huge plays just before halftime, including one of those contested catches on a deep post pattern, and then found his way into the end zone to swing momentum back in Seattle's favor. As a guy who carries the Seahawks pass catching room, Jackson Smith-njigba showed up when it mattered most. Now, opposite of Jackson Smith-njigba is veteran Cooper Kupp, who didn't have a gaudy stat line in the NFC Championship game, but it was an impactful performance. Kupp scored the insurance touchdown, converted the crucial third down to keep Seattle's clock-killing drive alive, but also drew a key defensive holding penalty that effectively ended the game. Now, what makes Cooper Kupp's revenge game that much sweeter is that he proved that he can still deliver on the game's biggest stage. It doesn't take an expert to realize that Cooper Kupp has clearly lost a step since his historic run to the Super Bowl in 2021, nearly breaking the single-season record for receiving yards set by Calvin Johnson, but still managed to win Super Bowl MVP. In 2024, the Rams were trying to trade Cooper Kupp at the trade deadline, but couldn't find a viable suitor. With his impending exit, it was reported that the Rams front office urged Kupp to retire, but when he refused, they attempted to sabotage his value on the open market before he signed a 3-year deal with the Seattle Seahawks in March of 2025. While he maintains a good relationship with Matthew Stafford and head coach Sean McVay, he did get the last laugh by ousting his former team en route to the Super Bowl.